Chapter 1190 of One Piece is here, and this chapter raises so many new questions in my mind about Imu, about Gaban, about the old gen, and overall this chapter is peak. Gaban is showing out crazy in this chapter. We're seeing brand new power levels for really just Rayleigh and Gaban in general, and really this is a dialogue heavy chapter between Gaban and Imu. We do get some fight scenes, but overall it's just a lot of talking. Well, let's get straight into this chapter. The chapter title is One Whose Death is Celebrated, and the cover request is Shanks cooking fish for Luffy. I really wish the whole red hair pirates were in this cover request, but it's just Shanks. That's fine. And the last thing to cover before we start is that there is another break next week. I think we're going to be getting the spoilers early though, so we'll be getting spoilers next week, but no chapter. So starting off the chapter, Gaban blocks the Zingtang axe. Chopper went in and he blocked the attack from Imu that was intended for Luffy. So Gaban was able to block that attack pretty easily. After he blocks the attack, he goes flying and so does Luffy. Like they both get launched back. And when this happens to Luffy, the swords are like poking through the log, so they press against the ground, and I think that they get lodged out of his body because the swords just pop out of Luffy. I'm assuming it's because they're like pressing into the ground and they just pop out. So Luffy is now freed. But then Imu goes in for an attack on Gaban, and Gaban's able to dodge it pretty easily, just like Luffy was the chapter before. So Gaban is very fast, like way faster than I would have assumed. Like he's looking like Garp on Hachinosu. And I'm going to compare him to old Garp a lot in this chapter because he's really showing out in this chapter. But Gaban dodges and he dodges upwards and he says, "What a hideous form, you don't even seem to be of this world." And then Imu's like, "Who art thou?" And Gaban says, "Someone who understands the world." So Imu doesn't even know who Gaban is, which I just think is crazy. Like, how do you not know the wings of the Pirate King? How do you not know, Roger's left-hand man? And it really seems like Imu didn't know shit about Roger either. But the Gaban drops down from the tree and he starts walking over to Luffy, and then he begins talking about Roger and the Pirate King. So he picks Luffy up by like the fucking scruff of his neck and he just starts scolding him for needing to be saved by an old man. And he's like, "So you have a shiny white form and you're an emperor, but still it doesn't matter." He's like, "Big deal, don't get cocky." So this is the humbling that Luffy is needed. He's needed to be humbled. Luffy's last real test was Kaido, and he barely scraped by. A lot of people think he's still weaker than Kaido for some reason. And Luffy hasn't fought anyone as strong as Kaido since Kaido. He's fought nothing but people at around Admiral level. The strongest person he's fought is Kizaru, and Kizaru wasn't even trying. So it's like now Luffy goes into this fight against Imu, he's pulling out the genie form, random ass form, doing nothing but sucker punches. It's like Luffy didn't even try a serious attack against Imu. Like, what is he doing? But while all this is happening, Imu's just standing there listening, just like listening to Gaban give Luffy shit. And that's what Imu does most of this chapter, is just kind of listen to Gaban. I think that Imu honestly liked this conversation. I think Imu is interested to see like what Gaban knows and just like the dynamic with Luffy. But then Gaban's like, "Do you want to die here?" And Luffy's like, "Well, I'm not gonna die." And Gaban's like, "You might as well. Do you know what's gonna happen if you croak?" And then Luffy's like, "I won't be able to save my friend's home or my crew." So Gaban is trying to like motivate Luffy, like, "Okay, Luffy, you have to stop fucking around. Like your friends are actually in danger, your crew is actually in danger." And then Gaban basically says, he's like, "As you rise up in the sea, more and more people are gonna be trying to get at your neck." Gaban says the king of the pirates is one whose death would be celebrated. So basically like everyone's aiming for the Pirate King. Everyone wants to be the Pirate King, kill the Pirate King, whatever, because everyone's gunning for the Pirate King's throne. So if any part of you still thinks becoming king of the pirates is going to be a stroll in the park, then go home now. He's basically telling Luffy, quit fucking around if you actually want to be the Pirate King. Like there are levels to this shit. Kaido is not the be end all. Like there are Joyboys, there are Emus, there are still stronger people in this world. So you actually need to be way greater than you think. And I think the reason Luffy might think he's at that level is because he's an emperor. Because like the Rogers and the Kaidos, they are the rulers of the seas like a Pirate King. But in order to be the Pirate King of the third world, you have to like beat Imu, beat Blackbeard. Like you have to do all of this crazy shit. So you need to, like the Pirate King of Luffy's era needs to be leagues stronger than Roger. Leagues greater than Roger. So maybe Luffy thought he was at that level already, but really there's so much farther to grow. But then Gaban just fucking chucks Luffy. He has him by the scruff of the neck or his chin and he just throws him. But then Gaban goes in for a praying mantis attack. He goes in for this like spinning attack against Imu. Imu's able to block it pretty easily. It doesn't look like there's any hockey or anything on this attack. It's just a pretty much spinning attack. And then Imu's like, "Is this a joke?" Imu's like, "What the fuck are you doing, dude? You're an old man. Like, what are you supposed to do when Loki and Luffy couldn't do anything?" And Gaban's like, "You want to kill him, don't you?" And Imu's like, "Yeah." And then Gaban's like, "He really reminds you of him, right? Joyboy." And when Gaban says this, Imu pulls out a brand new sword called the Bone Eater. And Imu's like, "What?" Imu's like, "Who art thou?" Imu says, "What does thou know about Imu?" I'm just like, dude, you don't know that the Roger pirates found the One Piece, or like they made it to the final island? They know the full history? Like, I swear, just Imu is just so out of the fucking loop of what's actually going on the seas. Like, how much does Imu know about this final prophecy that Luffy's supposed to be Joyboy and stuff? It seems like Imu doesn't know anything, because Imu's attacking Gaban with this Bone Eater sword, and Imu's like, "What do you know?" So I think Imu's like interested in what Gaban knows. Like Imu's ready just to like clash for a bit, because they just like clash and talk for like the next couple of pages. So I think Imu is just interested to know what Gaban knows, because then Gaban says, I learned from Joyboy's own words. So I'm assuming Gaban's talking about like a final poneglyph on Laughtail that explains the full history from Joyboy. I'm gonna assume that's what he means. Maybe it's like a recording of Joyboy talking, but basically I'm assuming like Joyboy explains what's happening, who Imu is, what actually happened in the Void Century, and that's what Gaban's referencing. But then Gaban basically says, but don't get me wrong, I have no intention of chasing after Joyboy. He's from the past. I've never met him. He says, I just want to see my captain's dream through to the end. So I think that dream of Roger's is to get Luffy to the finish line. And that's what all of the Roger Pirates have been doing this whole story. They've been sitting in these locations where they can get Luffy to the finish line. We had Crocus right at the entrance of the Grand Line. We had Rayleigh at Sabaody, and even Shanks. Shanks has been facilitating Luffy's whole journey. He's the one that got him the fruit. He's been waiting for him. He's been waiting for him on Wano. But then Imu goes cough, cough, and then says Captain. So I don't know if this is Imu getting tired, like their endurance is not that great, or if Imu's damaged from their fight against Loki or something like that. But honestly, I'm thinking that this is Imu's timer, because Imu's kind of like coughing up blood in this image, and that's sort of what was happening when Imu first came into Elbaf. So I'm thinking maybe Imu's timer's up. But then we go over to Luffy again, and he's still complaining. He's complaining about Gaban looking down on him. And then Luffy's like, come on, heal for just even a little bit. But Luffy's trying to like rest up on the sidelines, kind of like what Loki's trying to do. And then Imu's like, who is this captain? And Gaban's like, the king of the pirates, Goldie Roger. So Imu doesn't even know who Gaban's captain is. Like, I like Imu makes no fucking sense. Like, Imu is the most out of loop character. Like, how have you not been here? Where the fuck has Imu been this whole time? Then we see a little flashback in the throne room where Imu is remembering the elders talking about Roger. Imu said, this is distasteful. Why is a D being called the king of the pirates? And Imu's telling the elders not to let this name spread. So Imu is the one that said to call him Gold instead of Goldie. And then Imu goes, that's right, the one who ushered in a golden age of piracy. And why would his former crewmate protect Straw Hat Luffy? I'm just like, dude, Imu, do you not know fucking anything? No shit, Roger's gonna protect Luffy. They know the full history because they went to the final island to find the One Piece. And you should know about this prophecy of Luffy coming back with Joyboy's fruit being the next Joyboy. So no shit, they're gonna protect Luffy. Like, I don't understand how Imu doesn't know any of this. And then Gaban's like, because you're trying so hard to get rid of him, that's why I'm gonna protect him. He says, when you declared a kid like that a threat, so basically when you made Luffy your enemy, when you tried to kill him, now I have to protect him. You are now my enemy. Because Luffy is the one that they've been waiting for this whole time. Everyone's been waiting on them. Everyone knows about this prophesized child except fucking Imu. We see a little flashback on Roger's ship, and Roger says, eventually someone that can surpass us will be born. Roger says we were just too early. So it's interesting that he says eventually someone that can surpass us will be born. I'm wondering if this means just like he can get the Nika fruit, because the Nika fruit is locked down to this prophesized child. Like, no matter how strong Roger gets, no matter how strong Shanks gets, they're missing the busted fucking Nika fruit. And Roger says we were too early. It's because we weren't in the right time. There was a specific time when Luffy is going to be here. So it's like Luffy was never going to come around before Luffy, and he's not coming after Luffy. Luffy is that guy. Then we see an awesome panel of all of the people who have been waiting for Luffy. And Gaban says, you may as well have announced that he is the one we've been waiting for. And Gaban is saying this because you've targeted Luffy. You might as well have said that he's the person we've been waiting for, which is true. The fact that Imu is here now, it's because Luffy is actually Joyboy. And I think that's what Imu was able to confirm when they tried Dami Reversi on Luffy and Loki. Like, because Dami Reversi didn't work, Imu now confirmed that Luffy is the real deal, so Imu showed up. So we see everyone that's really just like dependent on Luffy, even like Whitebeard. Roger told a lot of things to Whitebeard, and Whitebeard kind of knew on Marineford that Luffy was the person Roger was waiting for. And really, like 4 out of the 6 people here have all been in like specific locations in order to get Luffy to a certain place. So this has all been one big scheme from the beginning that, you know, we need to get Luffy to this point. And it's just crazy that Imu doesn't know anything. Imu doesn't know shit about the Roger Pirates, doesn't know anything about Roger, doesn't know anything about Gaban, and Imu doesn't know anything about Luffy being the one. But then Imu goes, a valid point. We were hasty and foolish. Perhaps we simply mistook numerous coincidences for fate. Let me put it into this. And then Imu attaches a stigma attack to Luffy. So Imu's basically saying we were very hasty and there was a lot of coincidences and we didn't really act on them. I just wish we could have seen like them noticing these things in the story. Like, I don't know, after Ennie's lobby, them being like, a rubber person. But after Imu places a stigma attack onto Luffy, Gaban like notices and then he launches up into the air. And Gaban says, sorry, Treasure Tree Adam, I don't want to devour you, but... And he starts like charging up a giant fucking hockey attack. And he's like, my joints ache, my body's run down. And this is the exact same shit we heard from Old Garp. So this is like Old Garp 2.0 from Gaban here. And as Imu's going for the stigma attack, Gaban hits him with the Kamudo attack. And this attack is fucking insane. Like, this is some of the craziest looking hockey I have seen in the series. because these bolts of Conqueror's Haki, I don't know if it's the bolts of Conqueror's Haki or if these are like his sword slashes, but they're literally cutting through one of the giant branches on Elbaf. And one of the bolts is even like going to Luffy and it's arcing around Luffy. I think it's protecting him from the stigma attack, but it's like redirecting itself. I don't know. This is some of the craziest Haki we've seen in the series, and this is coming from old Gaban. Dude, this chapter has been nothing but Pirate King stocks, in my opinion, going up. Because coming into this arc and coming into this fight, I guess, I had Gaban and Rayleigh, like old Gaban and Rayleigh, basically right above Zoro and Sanji currently. Like Gaban and Rayleigh should be able to use Conqueror's Haki attacks, you know, better than Zoro and Sanji can now. Maybe their endurance isn't all there and their strength isn't the same, but they're still fast, you know, they still have good Haki. But this chapter, I'm just like, dude, is Gaban and Rayleigh a lot closer to Garp and Whitebeard and Kaido in their prime? You know, because old Garp on Hachinosu, he put up a great fight against Kuzan. He looked really fast. He had really good, you know, endurance, honestly. Like, I think Garp is still a league ahead above Gaban and Rayleigh. Even now, I think that Garp has better endurance than those guys. But like, in terms of Haki, Galaxy Impact from Garp was insane. But like this attack here, the scale on Elbaf is huge. So this attack is also crazy as fuck. I'm like, dude, how strong is Gaban in his prime? So maybe the gap between, you know, the top tiers, the Garps, the Whitebeards, and then the Rayleigh and Gaban in their primes wasn't as far away as we thought. I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about this more. Like, I would still put old Gaban and Rayleigh below Kizaru. Just judging from Sabaody, Rayleigh really couldn't do anything there. And I still think like in an endurance battle that they would lose in a fight against an admiral. But I don't know, man. Gaban's performance here, like this is a crazy attack. Like, I would assume that this is Gaban's strongest attack, which we didn't see shit from Luffy when he fought Imu, so I can't compare the two. But I don't know. For me, this is just stocks. Like, is Zoro and Sanji gonna be way stronger end of story than you think? I don't know. Like, is Zoro and Sanji gonna be as strong as Roger, as strong as Kaido, as strong as Whitebeard at the end of the story? After this chapter, I don't know. But this attack, it cuts the tree branch, so they start falling to the underworld. So I think that was Gaban's whole thing that he was trying to do, is just like get Imu out of here, get him to the underworld, get him far away from Luffy. And Gaban actually caused Imu to bleed. Imu starts bleeding from their head. So I think that attack did hurt Imu to some degree. Imu was still able to block it, which is crazy. But then Imu says, old as thou art still the Pirate King's crew. And Gaban's like, is that what you think? And then he goes for an 8,000 slash Grim Throng. So Gaban's going all out right here. I think he's using his strongest attacks. He's going like all out on Imu right here to get Imu to the underworld. And even Imu's like, damn, you're old as fuck, but you still have it. So I don't know, like Imu's gassing up the Pirate King's crew. I think that Oda might be setting a new bar for like the Pirate King wings. Like I don't know, Zoro and Sanji might be getting big boosts here in Elbaf. If these fights continue on, I think Sanji and Zoro are gonna grow leagues in strength in this arc. But Imu is able to block the Grim Throng attack with just putting their blades up. And then Gaban says, I could say the same to you, you know? And Imu's looking at him suspiciously. Dude, this is the craziest part of the chapter in my opinion. I think that Gaban is confirming that Imu was on Joyboy's crew. Because just before this, Imu says, as old as you are still the Pirate King's crew. And Gaban is saying, I could say the same to you, you know? Because Imu is old as fuck and Imu might have been on the old Pirate King's crew. And I'm gonna assume that's Joyboy, and maybe it was Davy Jones, but I think Joyboy being the first pirate, being, you know, the, messiah of the second world, it makes sense that Joyboy would be the Pirate King. I think Imu was on this team. That's where all of these moments where Imu and Joyboy have been close, that's because they were on the same crew together. I'm gonna probably make a video about this. This is one of the most interesting parts of the chapter. But they start falling to the underworld. We can see that they're just crashing down into the mountains. And we get a couple reactions from like Loki, Usopp, Nami. They're just like, holy shit, who was fighting over there? They're super strong. And we see in the final panel of the chapter that Gaban's arm was cut off in the fall. I'm guessing Imu was able just to like speed blitz him while they were falling, or maybe after the Grim Throng, Imu was able to cut his arm off. But overall, it was a crazy fucking showing from Gaban. I mean, he showed that he and, Rayleigh, if they're equal to each other, they are much stronger than I first thought. And I would say that they are much closer to those Garps in their prime than I thought they were. But we can see that Luffy reacts to Gaban's loss at the end of the chapter. He looks honestly pretty good. Like, he looks normal in the face. So I don't know how fast Luffy's healing on the sidelines. Maybe all that food he ate beforehand is coming back in to help him. But Luffy's reacting and he's like, oh shit. So maybe Luffy's gonna go down there next chapter to continue fighting Imu. I don't really know where we go from here because everyone's defeated. Loki's still getting healed. He's still down. And Luffy just got saved. I mean, he just got this pep talk. I'd rather Luffy sit with this pep talk for a while. And with Imu coughing up blood, maybe Imu's timer is about to end. So maybe Enies Lobby 2.0 is happening. Gaban takes the L here. Luffy gets his whole learning thing. But then Imu has to leave because of the timer. I don't really know. Maybe this is how Luffy survives. It's because Gaban sacrifices fixes his arm, he attacks Imu and causes them to go to the underworld, buying Luffy enough time for Imu's timer to run out. I don't really know. I'd like to know what you guys think about this chapter down below. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. That's all I got for today. See ya.